And we welcome everybody back to Sportscaster's Open Mic on WJR Radio. I'm your host, Johnny Kane, and we are joined by another young, aspiring sportscaster. And when I say young, I wish I could go back. Gavin Velicevic, just a sophomore at De La Salle Collegiate. How are you, Gav?
What's going on? Good to be here.
Well, it's good to have you on, man. And I know it personally. I know it intently. And as you do now, too, it's that this name, image, and likeness, NIL, those are three letters that are synonymous with sports now. And in particular with amateur athletics, how it's impacted from coast to coast. So in researching your story, what did you learn?
I think throughout NIL, we saw kind of both the positives and negatives come out. We saw the smaller deals ended up being more positive, but sometimes the bigger deals brought the more negative side, the disorganized portion of what could happen. But I think we saw both pros and cons, and I think either side could be argued fairly.
When you think about NIL, when you first learned about it, let me ask you just on a personal level. When you first heard about NIL, what was your reaction? Like you thought favorably, unfavorably?
So the first time I heard about NIL was in 8th grade, and we had to write a research paper on if college athletes should be paid or not. So that was the first time we kind of got a gist about it. And then last year, NIL gets legalized by the Supreme Court. So it's like, well, that's great and all, but is this going to lead to basically college just becoming professional all over again, but on a lower level?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is that, the amateur status, we call these student athletes. And I think for a long time, people felt that it wasn't equitable, right? Coaches were getting paid, ADs were getting paid, the school was profiting from it, but the athletes themselves weren't getting their equal share of the pie. Now it almost feels like the Wild West because there aren't strict parameters on what's possible, right? And so I think we're seeing some of the rich get richer and some of these smaller schools are struggling with it a little bit. But has your opinion overall changed about NIL?
I think the more I dug into it, the more of my opinion got supported. I thought, NIL is great and all, but I think it's being abused, certainly. I think it got rushed in there too quickly, and maybe that's why we're facing some of the issues we got today.
Gavin Velicevic. Here's Gavin's feature story on NIL at the high school level.
NIL is changing college athletics in many various ways. And like all things, some are positive and certainly some are concerning. In any case, though, its impact is broad and deep, and college athletics is likely changed forever as a result of NIL. So what about at the high school level? Is it a factor? And if so, how? I'm Gavin Velicevic, and this is my report on the emergence and early impact of NIL in high school sports today. NIL, name, image, and likeness, first emerged on the scene in sports when the NCAA's policy went into effect in 2021. At first, NIL was intended to be a way for amateur athletes, primarily at the college level, to make a little extra spending money, otherwise known as pizza and beer money. Athletes could use their name, image, and likeness, their personal brand equity, to promote brands in exchange for being paid. But what started innocently enough has become something much more significant. Now athletes aren't focused on pizza and beer money, but rather a way to acquire the trappings of significant financial success in the form of life-changing money that could support one for a lifetime. In 1956, the NCAA first allowed student athletes to receive athletic scholarships without any mention of their academic abilities or financial situation. Then, in 2009, the first player likeness dispute occurred. The then current UCLA basketball standout Ed O'Bannon filed a class action lawsuit against the NCAA, claiming an EA Sports basketball video game utilized his likeness without his consent or compensation. Finally, in 2019, California took the lead in the NIL world by passing the Fair Pay to Play Act, which prohibited the NCAA or membering schools from punishing student athletes who earned NIL compensation. However, this would only apply in 2023 and beyond. Following in California's footsteps, Colorado, Florida, Nebraska, New Jersey, and other states passed similar legislation allowing college student athletes to receive money for their NIL deals. Finally, the United States Supreme Court rejected an NCAA appeal of their antitrust lawsuit. This brought additional academic-related compensation and ultimately began the NCAA's decision to quickly adopt an interim NIL policy that allowed student athletes to benefit financially from their name, image, and likeness without any possibility of an NCAA penalty. Then the deals burst the floodgates across the nation, beginning with smaller brand deals, then forming into straight payments for players. Some of the nation's largest deals began sprouting up nearby. Notably, in East Lansing, The Athletic reports that Justin Ishbia pledged $7 million directly towards Michigan State's Men's Basketball Excellence Fund, which Tom Izzo may direct it wherever he thinks makes the most sense. NIL has morphed from earning promotional payment from brands to essentially now becoming paid athletes by college boosters and programs. In the January 2025 edition of The Wolverine, Chris Ballas writes about Michigan's journey to cultivating the #1 football recruit in the United States, Bryce Underwood. The college booster, who is now the co-founder and chief technology officer of the software company Oracle, Larry Ellison, was the largest donor noted in the Bryce Underwood deal. His wife Jolene is a Michigan alum that was displeased at the possibility of missing out on the best recruits for her beloved football team. Several sources report that Underwood was offered $10 to $12 million to come to Michigan and play as their next generational quarterback. Not only has NIL changed the landscape of college sports, it is slowly changing into a pay-to-play format. We're here with Grace Smoot out of North Central College in Naperville, Illinois, as a sophomore playing women's soccer. She's got a brand deal with BU Athletics. How's it going, Grace?
Good, how are you?
Going well. How has NIL changed team dynamics, or how did you learn about how NIL would change how you outlooked on your team?
So I didn't know a whole lot about it, but I had seen some posts on social media about other girls within other divisions, other teams getting these deals, and I was kind of interested. So one of my friends kind of helped me out. She is actually one of the BU athletes as well. So I saw her post and I decided to follow them and just kind of look at what it was about. And they're like the head of their page reached out to me and asked if I wanted to be a part of it. So that's kind of how I started with them. And I get paid for posts I make. I also can like design my own products. So for example, right now I have a hoodie that I designed that says determined to rise on it. So yeah.
Sure. And have you seen any, not specifically with yourself or with maybe with other athletes, balance between school and sports? Like maybe it hasn't worked out or it's gone really well.
So yeah, I think it's gone really well. So for like NIL deals and stuff like that, like this one for me is fairly easy to keep up. I find we have, like, monthly calls where we get to hear guest speakers, so, like, that's really helpful, and they're, like, very centered around, like, your faith, so that's a great opportunity for me because I like to use my gifts from God to play soccer, but then I also want to have this opportunity to learn more about my faith, get deeper into that, and then school, I am a health science major, so I have some pretty heavy class loads, and a lot of my teammates also have heavy class loads. But at our school, we prioritize our school first over soccer. But I think that even though our program is like highly demanding, we're very competitive, we also prioritize our grades in school. So I think the balance has been very good.
Awesome. And then have you seen at all any changes coming out of high school specifically? Did you start talking about the NIL deals with any of your friends, or did that change when you started in college?
Yeah, so definitely I didn't know like anything about it in high school. And then once I got to college, like some of my friends started talking about they had deals. I started seeing it on social media. So then I became interested in that because I was like, I would love to like make a bit extra money and be a part of these different companies, especially BU. Like that company to me is more than just I'm getting paid. Like, I'm actually getting life advice, advice about my faith. I have friends and stuff, so I think that's a really great opportunity for athletes.
And if you had either one word to describe, or would you say it was an overall positive experience?
Yes, I would, for sure.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Now joining us to talk about NIL and high school sports, we welcome with us the De La Salle Athletic Director, Coach Dan Roan. How's it going, Coach Roan?
I am good. How are you today?
Doing well. In your opinion, how has NIL changed team dynamics?
Are we referring strictly to high school right now, or are we referring at all college?
A little bit of both. You've obviously experienced at Ferris State a little bit.
You know, as far as college, I think it's changed as much as, kids aren't as committed to an institution. I think they're looking at it more as an opportunity to be somewhere, to learn an opportunity to go somewhere else. When I went to college, I played at Grand Valley and I was committed to Grand Valley, and I still belong to Grand Valley. I go to Grand Valley outings. I go to Grand Valley alumni functions. I think you're losing that. I think it's now part of a job. It's part of a situation. So it's disheartening because, you yourself, you go to De La Salle, you're going to be a pilot forever. And I think you're going to lose that. And so kids not having that tradition and that alumni, that flavor, it's going to be hard. And people aren't talking about that. And I think 20, 30 years down the road, it's going to have effect on some schools when you start asking people for donations and opportunities. You're losing those people. But, back when it trickles down to the high school effect, it's affected recruiting so much, because when college coaches come into my office now, we spend so much time talking about how this has affected their programs and what it's doing to their kids, and how they spend so much of their time now dealing with NIL and transfer portal and getting kids in and out of their program, that it's really draining college coaches, and it's ruining the game, and it's ruining their process. So people are just losing their focus. People are losing their excitement for it, and coaches are getting burned out really quick.
When you have those conversations with some of the college coaches, how much of it is about, is your player going to be committed to our school, or are they going to stay? Are they bringing a culture of commitment and responsibility?
It comes up. I think they look at some of our kids, especially De La Salle kids, knowing the kind of program that we run program where a kid who comes here, they're committed, the kind of program that we develop and the way that we develop our kids. I think they like that. Knowing, and they also look at some of our kids that have gone out to college. Are they kind of kids that are jumping in the portal? Are they kind of kids that are transferring? So that's important to them. Some of the college coaches come in, and that's the first question they ask. Do you have any kids that are in the portal? And I said, no, at this point we don't. Now I finally have experienced something like that. This was my first year with Brady Drogosh, but Brady was a kid that didn't want to be in the portal. He went to Cincinnati because he was committed to Cincinnati. He had an opportunity to leave Cincinnati when his coaches left Cincinnati right away, and he stayed committed to the recruiting process, but it just didn't work out. When new coaches come in now to universities, they have the opportunity to bring in their own players, and I don't think that's right. I think when you come into a job, you should be forced to develop the players that are there or recruit your own players. You should be able to bring your own team. When I came to De La Salle, I couldn't load the bus up with kids from other schools or kids from West Catholic and all of a sudden say, I'm bringing my own team. I worked to develop relationships with the kids that were here. And I think that's part of what you should be able to do as a coach. You should be able to nurture those relationships. And I think it's disappointing. And I mean, we just saw it with Indiana. Indiana was one of the best teams in the country this year. And I think something like 22 or 29 guys on that team were brought in to that program this year with that coach. And like 19 of them were from his former team. I don't quite understand how they can load up on a bus and all of a sudden leave one institution, go to another with their coach. I don't think that's appropriate.
If you had a chance, let's say you would have talked with Ward Manuel and the CFP Council, how would you maybe give a solution to fixing the NIL problem?
I don't know. I think they rolled it out too fast. I think the one thing they did is they didn't spend enough time really thinking about how this was going to impact college athletics and then impact everything involved with it. I think college athletics, especially Division One athletes, are getting a pretty good deal. And when you talk about a full ride scholarship, tuition dollars, they get monthly stipends, the athletic apparel that they get. Now, do some universities really benefit and get a lot for those college athletes? Yes. So, okay, can we look at a tiered system where, okay, every athlete gets a certain amount of money based on the institution, sure. So I think they should have slowed down a little bit. Now you could say, well, college athletics been going on for a long time, and these athletes all of a sudden just started getting paid. But I think there was a way to do this that should have been fair. When you talk about a high school senior stepping on a campus and getting $10 million his first day on campus and never playing a down of football, it's a hard pill for me to swallow. We don't know how well that's going to work out. We don't know if he's going to be a really good player or not. I just think they should have really looked at a plan to make it fair and equal to every player. I like a system where you kind of break it down where, let's say, a university, a football program gets $50,000 and every player gets $1,000, or maybe it's $100,000 and every player gets $2,000. You know, if you have 50 players on a team, make it fair. I know they want to break it. Some of them are looking at doing it more a position where quarterbacks getting a certain amount of money, receivers getting a certain amount, linemen getting a certain amount, which is kind of how the NFL does it, you know, when you look at the bargaining percentages. So there are ways to make this work, and I think they're going to have to, especially now that it's trickling down to high school, because it is going to be in high schools. It already is in a number of states in high schools. So it's here to stay. It's not going away. So we have to find a way to make it work. I think we will find a way to make it work. We just have to be a little more patient in the process and be a little smarter, because I think right now it's out of control.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate all your time.
No problem. I appreciate it, and thank you.
In NIL's quick stream to the high school level, high schoolers are beginning to be thrown into managing large sums of money without much experience. If the student athlete hasn't figured out how to manage a bank account, they'll most likely struggle to manage hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of their own money. Earning this quote-unquote big money at such a young age does set the student athlete up for overall financial success. However, it ends up being used or blown at such a young age to where the amount of money is no longer sustainable to continue a full life from it. This branch of financial success ultimately leads an individually focused mindset in high school sports and fundamentally breaks down the high school sports reason for invention, to play as a team against other young athletes. The image of how fans view the game has even changed considerably, because many only recognize the big names or the ones that are getting the big contract. The team spirit diminishes and the fans can't see the same team sport anymore. NIL has brought great financial opportunities to a ton of student athletes by using their name, image, and likeness, but it also comes along with financial pressures to manage it properly. The student athletes that are organized and can manage their own thrive with NIL deals, while others struggle with the additional responsibilities. Even though coaches emphasize the organization and balance between team sports, school, and economics, some athletes still improperly balance them, which diminishes their ability to manage these deals. As NIL continues to grow in high school sports, student athletes will need the right guidance to make smart decisions. What do you think? Does NIL help or hurt young athletes?
Well, it's a question that's not going away anytime soon. Our thanks to Gavin Velicevic from De La Salle Collegiate.